Find and learn from people who lived it wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from people who lived it.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It. If you're in a relationship, this episode is especially for you. We're going to be sitting down with Dr. David Leicken and Jennifer Nurick. She's a highly respected clinical psychotherapist, counselor, and energy healer with more than 2 decades of experience in the field of healing. Recently, she's dropped a book called Heal Your Anxious Attachment, a book that she admits would have helped her out immensely if she had just read it so much sooner in her life. And we're going to jump right into today's conversation because what I want to talk about with her, really what she focuses on is 3 things. The idea of what's a negative cycle, how to identify that you're in a negative cycle, and then how do we break the cycle, which if you follow along with anything I'm doing these days, you know is something I'm super passionate about. And so we're going to jump right into this conversation right here, right now with, give me an example of a negative cycle in a relationship.
In couples, I often find it's where you're having the same argument.
Okay.
Here we are arguing about the same thing again, or it's a different topic, but it's the same pattern of emotion and the same behaviors are going on. So it might be, you've left all the washing up for me to do, right? It often starts, so many couples say to me, Jen, we had this huge blow up and it started about absolutely nothing. Like we're embarrassed to tell you what we argued about. It's so ridiculous. But that's not the interesting thing. The interesting thing is what happens from then and what happens inside. And so in couple work, we really track that cycle. We get super curious. So, okay, you saw that washing up in the washing up bowl and just left for you. And what did you say to yourself? And it might be like, well, I said, everything is left to me. I have to do everything. Okay. And then what were the feelings that happened inside your body? Well, I just felt this rage come up inside. Okay, amazing. And then what did you do? Well, then I shouted at Pete. Everyone's just left the washing for me again. Okay. And then Pete, what did you, how was that for you when you heard that? Well, I just heard I'm being blamed and I'm useless. Okay. And what did that feel like inside? I just want to crouch down. I just want to hide. I want to leave the house. I just think it's hopeless. Why am I even here? Okay. How does that feel inside your body? It makes me feel nauseous. What did you do? I breathed in. I said, I'll do it later. And then I just changed channel. That would be a cycle. And especially if you're seeing it again and again with different topics, that's a negative cycle. Does that sound like what you heard?
Yeah, it's great. I love that. Pick up on it, Dave.
Yeah, what I hear in that too is it's not just the emotions that they felt, but it's the narrative that they're telling themselves. Right. And each side has a different narrative and the narratives don't always match up. So, you might look at it from an outsider and think, well, clearly he's going to be upset because of X. But then you hear like this different, you're telling yourself this, I'm no good. I'm useless. That's interesting. Right. And then you can start looking for those threads in other interactions as well, which is, again, how you start to pull it apart. A lot of times people don't even realize that that's they just know the emotions, that they're not listening to the narrative part.
And so let's keep going down this road because I feel like we're onto something that, is really tangible for people. And so, yes, person A blows up at person B feels like crap. They avoid fixing the thing. And so they exit stage left, right? They go and they go hang with their buddies and they go out and they get a couple of drinks, or person A decides I'm going to call my girlfriends and we're going to go to lunch, or we're going to go shopping, or we're going to engage in a workout, or, there's all different ways that we exit stage left. And so here's the question. How do we eventually get to a point where we address it like 2 counselors talking to each other, really listening, really understanding, really trying to help each other end the cycle of the dysfunction?
So number 1 is to do it when you're not in the middle of a negative cycle.
Okay.
Because usually people are activated in their cycle. They've been triggered. And when I talk about triggering, it's I think of it as time traveling. So maybe I'm the withdrawing partner and I've heard my partner shout at me and I'm triggered by that. And I've just time traveled, which is why the meaning making isn't always logical. And we might think, oh, that's interesting. You made that meaning, because I didn't make that meaning at all. But often we've time traveled to a time when we've heard that tone, that kind of the felt sense of the energy of that has meant, oh, I'm useless because I can't please my parents, because I'm not smart enough, or whatever the story is, the story is the trigger. Okay, so number one, of course we want to be able to pause in the middle of a cycle, and that's what we're aiming for, absolutely. But my recommendation at the beginning is to come to your partner more from that regulated place, from a place of kind of window of tolerance, and be able to say, like, look, I'm just noticing that we're getting into these fights, and we would normally just call it a fight. We're getting into these fights and we can't resolve it. I'm noticing that, like, it takes a day or two for us to feel good again, that we're not really unpacking it or discussing it. And I would just love for us to start doing something different. Like, what do you think about that? So starting, it's non-blaming. I'm not blaming my partner. I'm not saying you're always doing this or I'm always doing that. It's more of a, let's come together and there's this thing that's happening between us. It's more like coming together to discuss the big hairy elephant. We've got this big hairy elephant going on in our relationship. It's not feeling good for me. I don't think it's feeling good for you either. Like, let's talk about it.
Dave, would you mind? I'll let you finish on that. But no matter what you're going to say next, will you also then add to it your analogy of the vinyl record that we've talked a lot about? Because when she was talking about time travel, that's what it made me think of, like skipping back on the record. So Go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I immediately keyed in on. I love the idea of time travel, because you really are checked out at that moment. You're living a pattern that goes way back into the past and has very little to do with the current conflict that's there, right? You're replaying this old pattern automatically without thinking about it. You're just kind of going there. But I like the idea of time travel because it really encapsulates the idea that you're reacting now, but you're not in that place. You're in a place far, far into the past. So that's a neat analogy, and that I can really grab onto that. The other thing is about, arguing or trying to resolve it when you're hot. People dig in, right? So once grenades are launched back and forth, everybody's taking a defensive posture. And you have to be willing to look at your own patterns in order to make any headway with this. So as long as everybody's defensive and things are hot, you're not going to be able to look at yourself. You're going to still be shields up, looking at the other person and kind of looking at, how they're going to react to you. When I've worked with veterans that have post-traumatic stress and they get into an argument over something, and a lot of times those are more immediate. It's something triggered anxiety over safety, and the spouse with PTSD is reacting with inappropriate anger. You have to give it at least 15, 20 minutes before you even think about having a discussion, and just kind of let everything cool down, but deliberately make a time to come back to discuss it. So I think it's okay in the moment to say, this is not good the way this is going. Let's come back and talk about this in a little bit. Let's let things cool down a bit. I don't want to escalate things. I don't want to say anything hurtful. Let's just take some time out. I'm going to go take a walk. I'll be back in a bit. But not doing it in anger. Like the worst, I've seen people sometimes, they leave the house angry and then they go drive and they peel out in the front yard and make a big scene. And that's not helpful. Just do something calm. Deliberately go do something calm. Go take a walk. If you have to go into the bathroom, throw some cold water in your face, just do something to cool down, and then take a look at it. And for the audience, I think it's important to realize, however horrible you think your partner is, take a look at your own patterns. Have the courage to take a look at your own patterns. Not saying that you're entirely to blame or even more than 50% to blame, but you can't change the other person, right? So it's better to start with yourself and take a look at what patterns you have and try to understand what are the things that trigger you, and what's the narrative that you're telling yourself in those hot moments.
And if you don't mind, end with the idea of the vinyl record, because I think that's such a really, it's almost like traveling back in time. It's a good illustration for people to understand why we tend to get stuck in that.
Yeah. So we've talked about in past podcasts, I think it's been a while since we brought this topic up. Every experience that we have is cut in our minds like grooves in a record. It's permanent, right? So there's no erasing the past. There's no erasing the past patterns. You only add additional grooves beyond that, right? So especially in times where you're feeling attacked or you're in a high emotional, stressful situation, people tend to revert back to old patterns. And even if you've done work through therapy and okay, I need to stop, I need to listen, I need to check in with myself, I need to, ask what's going on with the other person and give them some space. If you get hot enough, you just go back to,
It's the easiest place to go. Jennifer, in the book, Heal Your Anxious Attachment, you talk about how discovery, healing, and growth are kind of the 3 stages of transformation. And then you also explore attachment styles in the book. And you say that you have really 3 things that you can do to help you have more effective conflicts that don't kill your relationship. So can we keep piling on there? Because I feel like this has turned into a beautiful episode that I'm going to probably call the relationship episode, because this is really what we're here to do in this conversation, is help people have healthier relationships. And so and you may have already, gone into one of them, but what are some of these things that can help you have more effective communication so you don't kill the relationship?
Okay, well, what Dave, what Dave was talking about is tracking your cycle first. And I show you how to do that in the book. I also have a table which helps you to really go through, when I was talking about, I've seen the washing up, what meaning do I make out of that? So kind of factually what's going on. Okay, there's washing up in the sink and it's been left for me. Has it been left for me? You could even question that. Or is it just that everybody's been really busy? And then what if I made it mean? So in that example, I made it mean that everything is left to me. Yep. So my place of pause in the cycle is right there, is to pause at the sink. Okay, I'm making it mean that. I'm feeling this rage coming up inside of me and holding myself in a different way. And that's something, again, I teach in the book about how do I relate to what's going on inside of me. It might just be, I'll just give it a quick example for listeners. One could be, okay, I'm going to let the rage come up. I'm going to feel the power of that rage. I'm going to let myself feel the indignation of that in the moment. I'm going to let it come through. I'm going to have awe at it. So I've got this observer self that's like watching. Wow, I'm so angry right now. And it's just washing up in the sink. Wow, that's crazy. But I'm going to be with it. I'm going to feel that heat. Okay. And then there'll be a moment when that passes, right? And then I'll think, okay, what else could have happened here? Okay, maybe everybody's been really busy. Maybe everybody's really tired. I'm also really tired. I also don't really feel like doing it. Yeah. So what are my options here? Do I want to do it now? Do I also want to go sit on the sofa and watch some TV? Do I want to say to the family, okay, there's some work to do in the kitchen. Can we all just pause and come and do it together? So that's my piece. So I've taken care of myself inside, given myself what I need. Maybe at the sink, I needed to pause, and with the anger, maybe I needed to go for a walk. Maybe I needed to do a little bit of bilateral tapping as I stood and looked at that. So part of that is learning, what do I need to let that anger come through, to maybe let my mind just go a bit crazy for a moment. Then what do I need to do to calm down, right? Maybe I need to call someone, take a break. Dave, maybe you've got some options that work really well for people with PTSD.
Well, I just wanted to comment on something that you're saying there. You can't help the automatic reactions based on past patterns, right? So if something triggers an indignity that causes you to get angry, there's nothing you can do right off the bat to prevent that automatic reaction. But you have a lot of options on how you respond to that reaction, right? And that's what you were saying about pause and take a moment and think about what you want to do. Maybe let the rage come through and let it wash over you and then dissipate a little bit before you react to it. It's fine to be triggered, right? People are going to get triggered by all kinds of things, and there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. But what your response is where you have opportunity for growth, and you can start catching it and learning other ways of responding to it. The other thing that I wanted to say too is there's a therapist's trick which I learned very early on. And that's kind of stepping outside of yourself and looking at your own reaction, right? So what my supervisors told me when I was learning therapy early on is assume you're an average person with the average number of quirks, the average number of hangups, the average number of triggers, right? So there are going to be things that set you off, and there are going to be things that, maybe draw you in a way that's not appropriate. You have to be able to step outside of yourself and look at your own reaction to it and say, that was weird. Why did I get so angry with that person? Like I just saw 4 other patients today in my office and none of them set me off like this, but this guy, he really got me pissed. What is that? What got pushed inside of me that all of a sudden I feel so angry, right? And as a therapist, you have reactions to things, but that reaction is data. Right, that reaction is information you can use to help the other person. Right,
there it is.
So now taking that trick and moving it over to the person that's in that conflict, just pause for a second. You just had a reaction to something. You become conditioned to react automatically, right? So that's the part that we want to break. Is instead of reacting automatically, just sit with that reaction for a moment and figure out what you want to do as your next step.
So can I ask you guys to kind of comment about this? In the book that I wrote, which is right there called How to Talk to People You Don't Like Talking to, I have this theory that we all wait until the thing happens. And one of the greatest things that we could do is to get ahead of things. And so I love this wash, the dishes example. It's such a classic one, right? What is the responsibility? This is what I wrote down while you guys were talking. Like, what is the responsibility of the party who gets pissed to communicate what they need ahead of time? For example, can you go to the family one night at dinner and you can say, look, over the last couple of weeks, there's been 3 or 4 occasions where the dishes have been piling up. And you all must think that I'm the person responsible for it because maybe I have been the person that stepped up and done them because they need to get done. But I don't want that to continue any longer. Moving forward, we are all going to take a responsibility and a share in this. And so here we go. Every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, when you see dishes in there, John, it's your job. Every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I'll take care of it. On the weekends, kids, if you see dishes in the dishwasher, it's your responsibility. So let's have a little bit of a conversation about the importance of getting ahead of things and communicating what we need ahead of time so that it doesn't get to the shitstorm.
Yeah, and I have a chapter on boundaries.
Yes.
Because we're talking about there is setting boundaries, and I have a chapter on communicating and how to communicate and a whole chapter on regulation, so that when we communicate, we're hoping that we're doing it from the window of tolerance, which again I talk a bit about in the book. But Dave, what's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, Mathew, you're correct, but I think you're a couple steps ahead, right? Because a lot of people that really get stuck in this over and over again don't realize that they're stuck, or they know that something's wrong, but they externalize it and say, well, my family sucks. They don't do anything to help, and so maybe the realization that you can have a conversation with them, maybe that's an earlier step, right? Just realize if you're feeling frustrated over the dishes constantly, you can discuss that with your family. That's an option. You don't have to just get pissed about it.
Yeah, that's a great call. You want to add anything to that, Jennifer?
No, yeah. Beautiful.
Okay. It's just one of those things that I know for myself, I have the avoidance style. And so when things don't feel great, I can shut down, or I can get a little bit quiet and get a little bit internal. And I have come to understand that if I want to be happy, if I want to take care of myself, right? This is what's, to me, this is one of the biggest pieces of self-care, is communicating to the people around you what you need. It's my responsibility to do that. Like, that's on me to let my wife know how I'm feeling. That's on me to let my job know how I'm feeling. It's on me to let my kids know how I'm feeling. It's not their job to freaking dig it out of me, which is how I can be sometimes. I can sit there and I can mope and I can pout and I can sit around and wait until somebody says, "What's wrong with you?" And then I unleash. And I just have found, man, if I can get in front of these things, I avoid so many conflicts with people.
Yep.
That is so beautifully said, Matthew, and such a typical withdrawer pattern, right? To keep it in, keep it in. So I love that you're saying that, especially for all the avoidance. That's such a great tip. So I'm more the anxious style, obviously. And so with the more anxious style, usually everybody knows how we feel. Everybody knows what we're thinking, and we're usually quite vocal about it. It's the opposite. But it can make...
You can also consider too that, oh shoot, I just lost my train of thought. How did I do that?
I don't know. The needle got stuck on the record.
The needle got stuck.
Jennifer, you want to finish up with what you were getting ready to say? You were talking about how I want to actually make you go a little bit further on that. So you're anxious. So help me understand that a little bit more. How might that anxious style show itself?
So in some schools, they'll call it more the pursuer, but same thing. In Sue Johnson's emotionally focused couples therapy, she calls it pursuer. So it's much more when you see when you feel relational distance, when you feel your partner moving away, and it could be a very small thing. It could be, I've said something, I've made a bid for connection. Maybe I've just said, "Oh, my day was really exhausting." And my partner goes, "Ah, and they kind of carry on reading the phone. That could be a little sign for me of, oh, he's not there. Now, for a secure person, they would think, oh, he's in the middle of reading an article. No problem. I'll talk to him in a minute. For a more anxiously attached person, my thoughts will more go to, oh, he's not interested in what I'm saying. Maybe he's not interested in the relationship anymore, right? That might not be logical, right? But that's where my relational thinking goes to. Yeah. And so then my tendency then will be to make another bid. Hey, I had quite a stressful day today. What are you reading? So I've kind of moved closer. Now, maybe he, as a more of a withdrawing person, is trying to decompress from work. Maybe he wants a bit of tight space on his own. And I've just kind of moved into his space. So he might pull away again. Yeah. And then I could escalate then, right? Where I want to try and get closer. So I'm trying to move closer all the time to find my comfortable relational place. Let's say my comfortable place is here, and maybe his comfortable relational place is here. And so we're always negotiating the space, right? Now, in relationships, the more anxiously attached I am is saying I want to be this close. If I have a more avoidantly attached person, they want to be there. That is going to make that relationship even harder. So in my relationship, I'm negotiating this space, right? And we're finding our comfort. And remember, it's a two-person relationship, so we're always closer or further apart. It's never going to be stable. It's always going to be moving. But if in a more extreme case, you might be negotiating like this, and that can feel very uncomfortable.
That's so interesting. I mean, you just described my wife and I, we have this thing where like she gets home from work and she's on her phone and I want to download about my day or something like that. And I used to get so pissed that she'd be on her phone checking her email. And so what I have started to do, you guys can tell me if I've nailed this or not. What I've started to do is I want to share something with you. When you're done on your phone, let me know you're ready. And that's the way I talk to her now. And so she's in her phone and I have something to say. I say, hey, when you're done reading that, I want to share something with you.
That is so great. And I use that too with my withdrawing partner.
Yeah,
it's exactly the same. Now I know. But that's because we've negotiated that space. We've spoken about it. I've said to him, you know, sometimes when I'm talking to you and you're looking at your phone, I feel kind of not important, and it makes me just feel really sad in my heart.
Right.
And he's like shocked. Oh, okay. I had no idea. I just totally wasn't meaning to make you feel like that. Okay, well, just like sometimes I'm right in there, because he gets right into things, because I know him and I love him. He goes right in the rabbit hole. And so he says, oh, just say to me when you finish, can we speak? Because I want to speak to you and I want to know about your day. And then I'm like, oh, that's so good. But then we're learning each other. Okay, that's how I work with you. That's how you work with me, because we love each other and we want it to work.
Right. Dave, you want to add something to that?
Yeah. If you have a couple where somebody is a little needier and they need a closer space, and somebody who needs a little bit more of a distance, as that person that needs the closer space pulls in and the other person feels maybe suffocated a little bit and they pull away, you as the needier person end up getting less of what you actually want. Where if you just give the person a little bit more space, you'll actually get closer to them. Yeah. It seems it doesn't, it's counterintuitive in that way. And the other thing too is if you have a catastrophic thought, right? So I just texted my spouse and they didn't get back to me, within 15 seconds. That means they don't care about me anymore, and maybe the relationship is on the rocks. And I mean, we have a lot invested in this. Maybe it's over. Maybe it's time to move on. Hold it. Okay, that's a thought. Now let's put on our Sherlock Holmes hat here and let's, gather some additional information, right? That's a thought. That's not necessarily the final conclusion. That's a thought. Now let's investigate further and let's challenge that a little bit.
Yeah, because we've talked about it. The average human has 60,000 plus thoughts a day. So there's going to be a lot of shit floating in and out, man. It's like, what are you going to give weight to? That's such a great conversation. As we kind of wind down with you, Jennifer, I would love to talk about how you see breaking the cycle. And as somebody who's so passionate about breaking the cycle and ending dysfunction in my own self and my own family, it didn't become important to me until I really understood one thing. And that one thing that I had to kind of land on was I feel what they call this transitional character energy. I really do feel like I'm the one sent here to end dysfunction. I'm the one here to try to make things better for myself, for the people around me, for my community. And I feel a sense of purpose in that it's my role to be proactive in conversations, to have these conversations in a way that isn't the stereotypical, back and forth, bitching and moaning kind of vibes. And so how do you see breaking the cycle playing out?
There are so many different ways to answer that, because I see cycles in so many places. I see cycles within, I see cycles in the family system, and I see cycles intergenerationally as well. Mm-hmm. But in general, what I talk about is, and through body, mind, and spirit, but discovering. So we have to have awareness around the cycles. So what are my repetitive thoughts? What are my repetitive experiences? What cycles am I in? Like, what cycles run through my family? Some families, when we really start to do a family tree, where we're not just putting in people's names and ages and where they were born, but we start to really think about, well, what was their life like? Often patterns of alcoholism run through families, patterns of suicide run through families, patterns of, divorce is really interesting. Missing children adopted out, abortion. I mean, some of that is kept hidden in secret, but some of it's known through families. And that can be super eye-opening of, wow, there are huge patterns of addiction through my family, of lots of different things. So looking at those patterns, like in my family, when I explored it, I realized, and I'd never realized this, that my family is really good at maintaining relationship between adults and children, but we are useless at maintaining sibling relationships. Sibling relationships are cut off through all the generations. Siblings find it really hard to stay connected. But with the parents, there's connection, even when there's dysfunction, which is interesting. So that can be really eye-opening. But so first we have to discover, we have to know what cycles am I working with? What comes through that generational lineage? What cycles am I seeing in my own life? What cycles am I seeing in my own family? Then there's healing. And so for me, that has been body, mind, and spirit, really through all the different levels. And I've addressed it in different ways. And I don't subscribe to there being one thing that fixes everything. I really don't. My own journey has been that different things at different times have really helped me. I did a patch where I did like 2 years of work with an Ayurvedic doctor, where I really did a lot of work on my physical health, getting my gut in order. That was amazing for me for a chunk of my work. I did a lot of about 7 years of very deep work with my mind. And that was a super helpful platform to work from. I still do parts work, and I still find parts that I didn't know that part was there. I'm still doing the mind work, of course, because I've got the grooves in the record. And so I'm still developing that observer self. So that's the healing. And yeah, for me, it's been, and I'd love to hear from both of you what it's been like for you, but I've done a lot of somatic work. So a lot of different styles of work, EMDR, lots. And I'm curious in that way. I'm a forever learner. So I've done lots of different things because I'm super curious. And the things that I practice in my clinic are the things that I found have worked really well in my system. So it feels authentic when I'm working it. And then I find that what comes out of that is this automatic growth. So for me, I feel like it's a bit like a constraint release, that when some of those constraints get processed, get changed, sort of this organic energy returns, there's more liberation, and then just more freedom and energy in my system to create things, to play with my kids. There's more positivity. There's more of this kind of get up and go, like, let's go and have an adventure. And this felt sense of embodied security in my relationships and in myself, and this deep knowing that I don't have to look to the other person for my safety and security because it's in me. And so if there were a tornado, I might not be safe, but I can feel that I have me in the best way that I can have me. And I also know that there are people around me that when I'm distressed, I can reach out to. I have therapist friends, I have a good community of friends and people around me. I have a lovely partner. My kids love me. Not that I'm going to rely on my kids in a tornado because that wouldn't be appropriate. But yeah, so there's this nice balance of rely on myself, and I can rely on other people. I have coaches. I still see a therapist. I still do that work.
Even that, and what's great about that is that you have a counselor, you have a therapist saying, "I'm still doing the work." So, Dave, I'll give it to you. Kind of your final thoughts on breaking the cycle. What does that mean for you?
Well, just to touch on something that Jennifer said, you're describing holding on, but not holding on too tightly, right? So if you're over controlling and you have such a tight grip on it, you end up having less control in terms of getting a good outcome from it. Where it's a balance between having enough control and having confidence in yourself to be able to improvise for the stuff that you don't know or can't control anyway. Right. So you kind of have to release that and let it go. And that's where things like meditation and mindfulness and other practices like that get you comfortable with just being. Like, you don't have to control it. You don't have to know where it's going. It's okay. You'll figure it out and have that peace in that moment for that. I think that's an important part of it.
Well, I think it's the most important work any of us can start to do is to get, inside, to start to discover what it is about you and your life that you would like to break free from. I have this expression that I love to say, which is deal with your shit so we don't have to. And it's so true. Like, just get curious about why you're the person you are. And maybe you're perfect. Maybe there's absolutely nothing wrong with you and you're the most perfect 10 on planet Earth, and you never get anything wrong and you never do anything wrong, and everybody that touches you turns to glitter and gold. Maybe that's the case. I'm not so sure, but get curious. And then I love what you said about get the healing process going, go to work on these things. And I've said it 1,000 times on this podcast, Dave, right? There's never been a better time to heal. There's never been a better time to heal. There is so many things that you can do. There are tons of modalities out there. There's modalities where you can talk about it until you're blue in the face. There's modalities where you don't have to say a single thing. There's counselors, there's coaches, there's psychologists, there's psychiatrists, there's drugs, there's psychedelics. Like there's a million different things that you can do in that healing space to figure out what it's going to be. And I love how you kind of wrapped that up, Jennifer, by saying, and then in doing those two things, it just lends itself to growth. So you get the final word on today's podcast. How have you grown, Jennifer?
Through expanding my heart, ultimately, the compassion within for myself. So when I'm not my best self, I have a compassionate for that. I'm able to be compassionate with myself and then compassion for other people, which I think really at the end of the day is all a function, really of the heart. So growing that.
Well, can't thank you guys enough for jumping on this episode to learn from people who lived it. I hope that people have taken heed in what we've said. And listen, if you're in a relationship that just doesn't feel great right now, and you have a sneaking suspicion that you might have a piece of that puzzle, and it might be, some of it might be yours, right? I know in my heart that a book like Healing Your Anxious Attachment could be the first step in your own discovery, your own healing, and your own growth. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Dave, thank you very much, and we will see everybody next time.
Take care, Mathew.
Great job, Jennifer. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. That was such a beautiful conversation. I really appreciate both of you. Great questions. Yeah. I feel like that was a really rich discussion. I feel like people will get a lot out of that, is my sense.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1, to help you feel less alone. 2, encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3, when you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.